Identify where it's coming from and what it is talking about. The Egyptians identified themselves on the monuments as the Rut, a pictorial representation found in the tomb of Seti I. There are four races of people arranged in groups of 4 men each. These are the Nashi, which means Negroes, Hemmu, which means light brown hue with blue eyes and their hair in a bag. So that would be more of a mixture of a mulatto. The Tamahu, who are fair as Europeans, and the Rut, who are Egyptians. These typical groups, not meant merely for conquered races, as may be gathered from signification of their names. The Tamahu are light-complected people. The Egyptian word Tama means people, and created. Hu means white, light, and ivory. Tamahu are the created white people. You got it in black and white right there. The Ne is black. The Na means black ink. Ne means blackbird. Shu means person of birth. Nashu, which means black born, or in Egyptian phrase, the black born from the egg, Shu. Him means rudder, to paddle. Fish means hemi, paddle, fish. Hemi, to steer. The Hemu is indicated as sailors or seafarers of the people of the Isles. That might be a form of your Phoenicians later on. The Isles of the Gentiles that might be rendered in Egyptians by the Isles of the Anu or Amu or Hemu. Now, to cut to the chase, the Egyptians were the true root ones of primordial people who first took conscious hold of the earth, retained a knowledge of the fact, and retained the knowledge of the fact that they were the first people to be on the damn earth. The land is the footstool. The land of Egypt, is the footstool root or root. The people were the feet, root, on which the human being first arose erect to attain full stature. Identically, however, when we learn that the Egyptians recognized the black race to be the first created men, the people of Ra were born from the great one who is in the heavens. The root are born of his eye, and in the persons of superior men. Now this is the key. He also created the Amu and the Tamu as he has confronted himself with the multitudes who came from him in the shape of Negroes, by which expressly and said, Horus is created him, and he defends their souls. So in so many words, they go in and they say that the Egyptians, in so many words in this passage, created, or the first black man created the Amu, which is another fair-skinned race, and the Tamahu, which is the created white men. This is all coming from the temple of Seti I at Abydos, the first Holy Land. So now we have a page of history that don't suggest no ape man. This is what the Egyptians are saying, and they say they call them the created white people. You see? Diop in his book, it's not Pre-Colonial Black Africa, it's the other one, Egyptian Origins of African Origins of Civilization, Myth, and Reality. In that book, he goes all into the Talmud, but he omits this page where it says they are the created white people. You see what I'm saying? So we have counter history that suggests other than this ape thing. We can prove this over and over through mythology.
Okay, so the white race being a created race. Then how do we sync their history up with being a created people and then overpowering the people who were knowledgeable enough and powerful enough to create them?
My take on it, based on the mythology again, is it didn't really overpower them. If you've been on the earth for a couple of million years, and even Dr. Ben said that he gets more of a deterioration, a time just ran out, than he does someone coming and knocking us from the throne. Which means if you've been on the earth for millions of years, there has to be an intermission. We were weak from our infrastructure of being here thousands and thousands and millions of years. Physically, psychologically, and mentally. You see what I'm saying? Clearly, if the Africans were not weak psychologically and mentally, and the biggest the continent of Africa is, and all those Africans, they could have got together, crossed cultural lines, and stopped the European if they wanted to. We're talking about a small group of people. Here's the people that we say are so spiritually in tune. Why is it that they couldn't communicate with each other? We're talking about mass amount of black Africans in numbers that couldn't stop this thing. But in so many words, what we have is some type of catatonic state where these people were so old until the concept of even securing themselves based on a defense system didn't even register. And one of the reasons why it didn't register, because we had deteriorated to the point whereas we didn't look at each other in unity when it comes to color. The concept of color, if you're on a continent of Africa and everything you see is black all your life, the concept of color would not be the defining factor. It would be culture, language, customs, which in the case of deterioration, we had grown into too many of these cultures that saturated the central power. That meant that in these ancient civilizations, at the height of our power, those civilizations were vast. To have thousands of people under the same culture. As time went on, these civilizations started deteriorating, which creates smaller civilizations on down to tribes. So therefore, the smaller the civilization gets, the weaker it gets, because they don't have the central power of mass number under the organized culture. So as the civilizations get smaller, customs and culture become sectarian, different, multiple. The ways of communication breaks down. So when the outside invader comes in, there's no such thing as a central organization where you can even communicate on a mass level for a great defense system. Meanwhile, he comes in and pits these people against each other because these people have deteriorated enough down to really think that their culture suggests that they are a different race of people than the brother next door, which is the same thing. Now, going back to mythology, mythology say that this would happen. They said that they would have to take an extract. You got all these thousands of cultures. This is very profound here. To try to understand what's going on. In so many words, what went on was not necessarily a fall. It was a divine plan. The ancient mystical masters that ran the earth understood that one day there would be a deterioration period which would separate mass population of people who had a consensus of knowledge, information, and science under one cultural system, or 4 or 5 major cultural systems which were strong. And they understood that these systems would deteriorate and become multiple systems with fragmented cultures. So they understood that the central plan was to take those fragmented cultures, Egyptian, West African, Central African, extrapolate or extract the best, the strongest out of those cultures, remove them and put them all the way in the West. And then those cultures come together sexually on a procreation process that make a new creation. So those new creation, what would make that new creation a unifying factor that the African didn't have by deterioration? Because in us is something that's going on that the Africa is separated by. What do we mean by that? You got Evo, Hausa, Dogon, Timbuktu, Egyptian, Kushite, Punt, Somali, Libyan, Nigerian, Ghanaian, Senegalese. Right. But over here, you create a new person that is mixed together of all these different Africans, because the simple fact, over here you were just a black person, so they just put you together and made it you. But in our blood system, we got Dogon, because we've been a great mixing bowl in the West that it talks about in the Kabbalah. Out of these, I will call my son. These houses will come back into covenant, God's covenant, which is the tribes of Israel, Isis, Ra, and Elohim, which is Horus, being reunited. And when they come back together, in our blood, we will have Egyptian, Dogon, Hausa, Nigerian, ancient Yoruba, ancient Bambara, you know what I'm saying, the Fawn, the Dahomey, all in the central blood system, which is a reunited Africa of the ancient world in the new people, because we are a mixture. Whereas the other Africa had broken apart and made other cultures. In us, we represent the uniting, the solidarity, and the merging back into those ancient cultures, which is called the smooth ashlar, or the crown jewel, or the finishing product. The ancient mystical Africans, recorded in the doggone mythology, we got so much of it, understood this. And that would become the body of Osiris, connected back together. You see? So here's a whole nother form of history that is told in various forms of mythology. The scattered tribes of Israel, the scattered houses. But in that ancient mythology, they always talk about a gathering. So right in this judgment scene, in the book of Coming Forth by Day, to look at this on another level, you got these different netters, which represents different energies, different aspects of the planet Earth, all assembled, all going through a filtering process of the weighing of the heart and the balancing of the scale, which in turn is the finished product again of Osiris on the throne. So this picture of Osiris, or Osir, these netters, or these particular entities you see here, these gods, these netters, these judgments, are nothing but components inside of this one God. So all of these is in him. And all of these represent the mechanisms that work to put all of these back together.
Now, it's interesting. You're saying these represent the mechanisms. Well, let's talk about those mechanisms and what that really means.
Well, you got the feather of Mayat right here. Now, let's go into ancient esoteric information. Mayat also is this balancing scales. The royal art of ancient Kemet, or ancient Egypt, is the mystical art called alchemy, which is the study of melanin in so many words. The royal art is going on inside of the body of Osiris, therefore, as representative of inside of the body of the original people on earth, which is us. We are the Osirians. The different Anubis would be a gateway that these gods would filter through to become the one Osiris. Mayat, the feather, would be a gateway or a form of balancing that these netters would come through and filter through and sift through like a milling process to become the body of Osiris. The god Hemmitt, which is the eater of souls, which in actuality would break down the process of the individual souls to mix it back in to make the perfect elixir. And the god Tahuti which in so many words is showing that these particular entities here are intelligence, because he's recording it. In so much as recording it, he's a form of the synthesizing process of this consciousness that's coming up out of this whole thing, which is the consciousness of Osiris, which would be our higher consciousness. So there's a physiological or cultural level of the same court system and how they do all that. They got that from Hemmitt. But the court system in ancient Hemmitt, that now we even have the judge Osiris in the modern time. Because if you go to England, they might have a white wig on, but the judge, his wig has nappy hair in the top of it. So they have these white wigs on in England, and all the jury or whoever is judging, their wigs is smooth. But the judge, the main judge, he might have smooth hair on the side, but in the top is nappy little peppercorn beads within the white wig. So we have a prototype of ancient Kemet being copied by the Europeans, but even that prototype of the law in the court of ancient Kemet is only a manifestation of something that's going on inside of the body also too, a judgment of energies.
What do you mean? A judgment of energies.
Judging, in so many words, it just means balancing out. Balancing out. Bringing two forces together and balancing them. In our body, the central staff that balances out all of these latent energies in our body that we call our spiritual self or our soul, has one central balancing system that shoots up the spine, which is called a Kundalini force. Which is represented in ancient cultures as the staff of Tahuti, the staff of Moses. Moses takes the staff and parts the Red Sea. The Red Sea is the blood vessels that surrounds the spinal system. You see, there's 32 vertebrae in the spine, 32 degrees, and 33 degrees, which is which would be the final one in Western Masonic aspect. All of this stuff is talking about a balancing that's going on in the body, which is recorded as a balance that should go on in society. As within, so without. As above, so below. That's what balance is. You see.
While we're on this, Bobby, I think it's a good place to segue into looking at the spiritual
Mhm.
essence of Kemetic Egypt, and how that was reflected in everyday life and social life and values and morality, in the ability to accomplish the things like building pyramids. And what did they represent?
Okay. And then we're going to go into that in a few seconds. Aspect of ancient Kemet. We must understand what did they know about their remote history. And what about that remote history that they knew about that would give them the insight in the spirituality to produce a practice and produce various ways of spirituality and scientific ways of looking at things, a research in trying to find out what is needed to be done to get to a higher spiritual level. What was it in their remote past, that brought them to these conclusions? Apparently, these are the most illumined people on earth. And they were the most illumined people on earth because they knew something generally about where they came from and how they got to where they were and basically where they were going. And all the stuff in between is the process and the steps that they took to ensure themselves the final solution. So in order to understand that, we must understand the beginning. The Egyptian beginning or the Kamite beginning, in so many words, to cut through all of the different aspects of ideology, in so many words, they understood that there used to be another primordial entity that somehow was thrust into a new reality of physical existence. And that primordial entity woke up one day and found itself to be human and having a human experience in a new situation that is totally different than the prior situation of the divine, and to put it in so many words, the prior situation of being gods, omnipotent beings. That's a hell of a information and a blueprint to start off with that would make you superior in a sense that you know that you were these advanced beings that one day was shifted into a new paradigm of human existence. That's what the Kamite and Egyptians knew. That they were shifted into a new paradigm of human existence. And number two, they had to live out this human existence of several eons only to come to the final solution or the final metamorphosis or manifestation back into the original aspect, but not necessarily the same. It's the concept of a caterpillar going into a cocoon and becoming a butterfly. The caterpillar was the original larva of creation. The human is the cocoon stage of something that is not finished. I don't care how much of human civilization we go through. It is always in the process of becoming the butterfly, which is a metamorphosized caterpillar, God, cocoon stage human. Butterfly represents the finished product. In Egypt, you always saw this scarab. Let me see if I got my ring. This scarab. This scarab, which represents dormancy, will one day grow into the winged beetle Kephra, which is the finished product. But as long as you have these two principles in ancient Kemet, it means that humanity is never going to be the final stage. We can never go back to kindergarten, no matter how advanced we thought it was. We have to become something new. This is the fundamental and central to all world mythology and all world religions. Christianity, we call it the Christ. That is a metamorphosis. In ancient Egypt, the central royal art, or what you would call the highest mystery that goes beyond worshiping the gods, the highest mystery was what these gods were composed of. What were the energies? What is this energy, this substance, these compounds, these elixirs that later day mythology calls the gods? What is this force? And that's where the royal art of ancient Egypt, which is the highest form of any spiritual science on the planet, is that of alchemy, which is the study of the breakdown of the particles in the universe and the particles in man. As above, so below.